Hello, Beak Squad. Thanks for joining me on my live stream tonight. So great to see so many of you already joining in and being a part of our live stream tonight. And we call you guys Beak Squad. We're all a big family, big community of beekeepers, and it's good to be together with our Beak Squad. We have Beak Squad coffee mugs and Beak Squad t-shirts as well. So we think that's cool. We have a little website dedicated. If you want to get some of those Beak Squad merchandise, you can wear your Beak Squad shirt to a conference and we'll be like, oh, look, a Beak Squad person. Hey, everybody. Good to see so many people already in the comment section, the chat. So many of you are from different states all around the world even. So thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate all of you guys so much. And we want to point out somebody new to the live stream that's helping us out so much, Jessica Fairfax. If you see her in the comment section, Jessica has been doing such a great job as a host, commenting and welcoming you guys, that we decided to say, hey, Jessica, we want to bring you on and let you be known as our hostess, welcoming people and chatting with different people, sometimes sharing. I can't keep up with it all because you guys are so great about joining our live stream. But welcome, Jessica. So thanks for helping us, Jessica. We appreciate you so much. And also, when I talked about the Beak Squad t-shirts and merchandise, Candy is doing that. And so we appreciate her taking care of all of the Beak Squad merchandise. Many of you have already bought the Beak Squad t-shirt, and I've been wearing them outside working bees, and they're black. And I'll tell you, my bees have not been offensive with that black shirt on so far. And they are hot, though, if you're wearing them out. Man, speaking of hot weather, has anybody been dying other than me outside? Oh, my gosh. I have been making so many videos, gathering so much footage, and it has just been well around almost 100 degrees outdoors. And I tell you, I am soaked from head to toe. It is unbelievably hot. Been trying to manage just staying cool out there. So let me give you a pointer right off the bat. If you're outside working your hives, of course, and it's just blazing hot, stay hydrated. You need to drink something like Gatorade or Body Armor or any kind of drink that might help you stay hydrated. But here's the tip. I've shown this in my videos. With your hat and veil on, if you push your lips against the veil and push the bottle against the veil, you can actually drink right through your veil and you never have to take your hat off. Brilliant idea, isn't it? I got the idea because when I was working a commercial bee yard, I saw some people that smoked cigarettes and they were smoking their cigarettes right through the veil. And I thought, I think I could drink through the veil. So do stay hydrated. My gosh, you don't want to have a heat stroke out there. So I noticed some of you already said you've been harvesting honey. Yeah, we've had so much honey this year. We started out with a little bit of a drought in the early part of the summer. But then we've gotten a lot of rain recently. Things are still, got clover still presenting a lot of nectar out there. Leave a comment in the comment section if you've harvested your honey, and leave a comment about how much you've harvested. How much have you been enjoying in the harvest already? I have so much honey, to be honest with you, here at the location of the bee yard where we have the YouTube studio beehives. I've got about 20 colonies out there, in that area. And it's much more honey than I can take time to harvest. I mean, now the flow hive is easy to harvest. I'm getting ready to harvest that pretty soon because it is capped over and I'm looking forward to just turn it crank. But the other stuff takes a lot of hard work. So stay cool. Leave a comment in the comment section about what your harvest has been like and how much honey that you have enjoyed harvesting already. Last week, we had some great conversation, some great questions that was answered. I want to clarify that I'll answer as many questions as possible. You do not have to leave a super chat or donation to get your question answered. We do our best to answer all the questions, but of course, we usually can't get to all of them. But I do want to take a moment to thank last week's donors that left some donations last week. Sherry, can you still hear me talking? Okay, you can still hear me over that. So we had quite a few people that made donations last week, and I just wanted to give a shout out. It means a lot to us when you guys do leave donations on our super chats and such. It helps a lot. I was figuring out how much it costs to live stream, and I think you'd be surprised. I'm not going to say the amount, but I was surprised because we live way out in the middle of nowhere and our internet is very expensive. So you guys gave $41 last week. So I really appreciate that so much. And so tonight we're just going to have a good time together, sharing some ideas about questions you have, answers. But before we get into question and answers, let me tell you about last week. Last week, about 2 or 3 days ago, trying to get my glasses not to reflect. I had a great time. I was asked to speak at the Central Illinois Beekeepers Association. Now, most of the speaking I do is in other states, believe it or not. I live in Central Illinois, and I'm often flying around the country speaking. But I've talked a few times here locally this year. And one of the places, I've been in a lot of Zoom meetings, but one of the places I went to a couple of days ago was Central Illinois Beekeepers Association in Bloomington, Illinois, which is, hour and a half north of where I live. I'm going to tell you what, I had the time of my life there. They were so fun. So fun to be with. And if some of you are watching, thanks for welcoming and allowing me to share with you that evening. They had some great technology on board with Zoom. They were broadcasting the thing to other members that weren't able to be there through all kind of special technology. It was really cool to watch. But I could roam around the room and some kind of special camera followed me. The microphone followed me. And no matter where I went, I need that in my bee yard to follow me. But Valerie did such a great job bringing me in there and taking care of me while I spoke and getting me the directions to get there. But they were a great group. We just simply had a ball. So I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak to local clubs. I don't speak at a lot of local clubs, but this one was, I could drive up there, speak, drive home. Wasn't too much time away. But a shout out to the Central Illinois Beekeepers Association in Bloomington, Illinois. You guys did a great job just sharing together. A lot of the members there, several of the members, reminded me that like 14 years ago that I made a presentation at one of the community colleges in Bloomington. I used to teach beekeeping at one of the community colleges there. And several of them, I bet there was 5 or 6 people that told me that they were in those courses, those beginner courses, and they got started in beekeeping from the courses I was teaching there. So that was really exciting to see that they kind of grew into a great beekeeping club. A lot of fun, a lot of activities that they participate in. And it was a good mixture too. I noticed that they were about, I always wonder about the combination of men and women in beekeeping clubs. But this was about 50-50, maybe a little bit more women that were there than men. And I just like to see the good mixture of everybody that's there. And so great time together. So I'm kind of glad. I think I'm done speaking for the year, and I'm not really positive, but I think I am. So it's fun doing a lot of speaking, but it's also good to stay home and not have to fly around and speak. So tonight, if you guys have some good questions you want to throw on me on this hot day, then hot evening, then let me know what you're thinking, and let me answer some of your good questions tonight. All right, Starlight Hill Farmhouse. My hive lost her queen in a swarm. I bought a queen. They killed her. They raised another queen. I can't find her. They've been 3 months without a queen. What do I do? Now that's too bad. That's a tough one right there. If you have more than one hive, can you bring over a frame of eggs and see if possibly you can actually have them raise another queen? That's one option. I hate to see you keep buying queens and throwing in there. But on the other hand, that's happened to me before. And about the only way that I can overcome it is I have to keep introducing queens. Sometimes they are attempting to raise a queen. You just don't know it. Thank you, Neil, for your donation, your super sticker. So sometimes they are raising your queen. You just don't know it. It's maybe a virgin queen taking a mating flight, but it sounds like you've gone 3 months without a queen. You're at a risk of having laying workers. So keep an eye on things, but let's drop another queen in there. Can you buy one? Try it again. They do make a frame where you can put the queen cage in the frame. It's a big queen introduction frame, and you can maybe be able to put the queen in there and help them get used to her pheromones. And then you can open a little door at the top after, a week maybe. And then she can walk out and be the mother of that hive. So good luck with that. I hope that works out. It is frustrating. A lot of people don't realize that. Hey, Jean, how are you? Can you explain the different buzzing sounds bees make and why they do so? I really can't. It's you could probably do some Google search about that, but bees make a lot of different noises. And I've actually walked past my hives before, and I've heard sounds coming out of there that I don't think bees could make. I'm like, what's in there? What is that? What are they doing? It sounds like somebody's vibrating, running an air gun or something, they make all kind of different noises. They do communicate a little bit by making noises. Of course, their main way of communicating is by the spreading of pheromones. They generate a lot of pheromones and mix those pheromones together for different ways of communicating. But they do make a lot of buzzing noises as well. So can't help you out there much, Gene. That's a good project, Gene. I want you to go to work for us. I want you to go online, do a bunch of research on different sounds that bees make, and hit us with that next week at the live stream. Hey, Jeffrey Mueller, how are you tonight? Harvested 400 pounds in July, bottled 150 pounds. The honey is cloudy, not clear. I've never had this before. What are your thoughts? It's not crystallized. Yeah, I've seen that too. The honey that I've harvested so far this year has been very clear, and it's been extremely, extremely tasteful and really sweet. A lot of you guys send me honey. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I sample it, I taste it, I put it in my coffee. And I've got to say, of all the honey that you guys have been sending me, mine still is the sweetest. Mine by far is unbelievably sweet. Probably mostly clover here in Illinois is where my honey's coming from. I think sometimes the cloudiness of honey could be the process that you use. Maybe you somehow caused it to have a lot more air bubbles in it. The way that you allowed it to pour or be filtered or strained or whatever. I think sometimes it's just the nature of that particular honey. It can be a lot more cloudy at times. I know anytime I've actually done some straining where I crush the comb instead of cutting the caps off, then it's a lot more cloudy because a lot of that wax gets in there. But I've been given honey before because people said it's too cloudy. What do I do with it? And it tastes okay. And I didn't really put it under a microscope to see what's making it cloudy. Maybe it is slightly crystallizing and you just can't tell. But hey, as long as it tastes good and it's not crystallizing and you're not trying to win a blue ribbon on your honey, honey is good. It's okay. Okay. Hi, Shell Nixon. New to beekeeping and enjoying your classes. Hey, good to know. Sherry and I appreciate all you guys that take our online beekeeping courses. We've had those beekeeping courses online a few years before COVID struck, of course, 2020. And when COVID pandemic happened in 2020, everybody really started taking online courses because they couldn't go to their local, classes, on-site classes. And we appreciate that. We really do. The classes have been great. And I'm looking forward to updating all my classes. So I'm going to be updating those hopefully in the next 12 months. And that's going to be a big job for me. But I'm trying to gather footage for it now. Maybe I can do that over the winter. So thanks so much. Our classes are available on our website at honeybeesonline.com. So many of you have taken my classes, and I think it is imperative that you take a bee class somewhere, a thorough beekeeping course. Please do that. Good job. Brenda Jenkins, do my bees recognize me when I visit watching from coastal North Carolina? I really believe bees do recognize you because bees are very good that way. They can really recognize things. They're in the animal kingdom. We have two kingdoms, the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. So dogs have a way of recognizing their owner's footsteps when they walk. We used to have dogs that when the school bus came and down the road and would, going to bring the kids home from school, the dog would hear the school bus from miles away and get excited. And I think animals are very similar. Bees are like that. Bees can get very accustomed to your ways of doing things quite often. And I often teasingly say this: if you don't believe me, dress up in a bear suit, take a baseball bat, and go out there and beat up your boxes every day at the same time and see what happens. Before long, when you walk out of your house 5 minutes before you get to that hive, those bees, scout bees, are going to be stinging you before you get near that hive. They're going to identify the bear suit, the person with the baseball bat. They won't let you get near their hive. So they have the ability to do that. So I think the opposite is true. If you work them and you're nice, you're gentle, they kind of smell you. They smell your hormones, your pheromones. They can detect that it's you, and they're going to react to you because it's you. Now that could be negative or positive. they may react because you killed too many bees last time on your last inspection. But if you're gentle, you work them nicely, they might give you a pass and be nice to you. Well, what was your inspection? Let's see. What was your inspiration to become a beekeeper, and do any of your children and grandchildren participate? Oh, that's a good question. Back in the 80s, I started beekeeping in the early 90s, but back in the 80s, I actually lived just north of Springfield, Illinois. There was a man out back that his backyard was adjacent to mine, separated by a fence. His name was Jocko. I lived in Williamsville, Illinois, and Jocko was about 175 years old. I'm kidding, but he was an old gentleman. And he kept 2 or 3 hives in his backyard, just feet away where I could watch them. And I was really like, wow, that's really cool. And when I moved to Ohio, a friend of mine got me started in beekeeping in Ohio. And he inspired me by, saying this might be something you would enjoy. He was a beekeeper and a tree had fallen over. Let's take a chainsaw. Let's move the comb out, put them in a box. I'll supply things for you. I was in my early 30s. Hey, I was pretty adventurous. Got started in beekeeping the hard way by cutting a bunch of bees out of a fallen tree. So that was just something I got started doing because I do have a lot of hobbies, and that was a hobby I added. And then when we moved out in the country where we live now, we just started expanding the bees. So the inspiration was, I guess, the love of honeybees, love working them, learning about them. But keep in mind, when I started beekeeping, there was no internet. There really wasn't a lot of classes when you compare it to what we have today. There was no live streaming. People couldn't live stream and ask questions like this. Somebody threw a ABC XYZ book at me, 1932 version. I was learning bees like during the Great Depression. So I started kind of the hard way. So people that are starting now have a lot going for them. So my children or grandchildren, I do have some of my children. One daughter, Jennifer or Carrie, she usually has some hives where she lives. And my oldest daughter, Jennifer, and her husband often have hives. Jennifer and Dustin actually a few years ago were raising queens for me, so they've been involved in it. My other kids, I work my kids pretty hard on the bee farm. My second oldest son, I worked him so hard that he decided to leave the beekeeping farm and join the Marines and go fight battles overseas to get a break from his dad. I don't know. So that gives you some idea. I do kind of push my children sometimes. But anyway, no, they're not really into beekeeping like I am. I don't think I'm going to be able to hand the farm over to them, but that's fine. Good question. Hey, Rob, how are you doing? I opened a hive last week. It was April package, found 30 to 40% of my brood and bees are drones. And the queen looked a little thin. Any thoughts on why so many drones this late. Thank you very much. You know what? It's hard to say. Most hives that are healthy, well-fed hives have drones, and they have 200 to 2,000 drones in a colony of 60,000 bees, roughly. I wish my screen treated my glasses better. But I would say it only concerns me if you don't have good laying pattern of your queen. Like if you don't have a lot of smooth brood of worker pupae, then I would be concerned. If you see a lot of brood that's drone brood, then we're going to say, uh-oh, where are my workers? Why don't I have a lot of good solid brood pattern of worker brood? That's my concern there. But if you have that, but you see have a lot of drones, you know, hey, it's just one of those things. They're doing a good job. You might have a little more mites because mites do prefer young drones. And so that they can expand quicker if you have that many drones. Keep an eye on it, Rob, and see if you have good worker brood, smooth, you know, good brood pattern of worker brood that tell you. Otherwise, it might be a problem with the queen not laying well. If she is small, it could be a virgin queen. They're replacing her. She didn't get mated well. So check your eggs, larvae, and pupae. See if you got good workers coming in. Good question. Sorry that's going that way for you. I want to remind you guys on September the 14th, we're going to have a fundraiser right here on Livestream for the Bee Informed Partnership. I really like this organization. I like Eric a lot. I see Eric at a lot of conferences. He's a good gatekeeper of Bee Informed Partnership. He's a good person to be out there. We've had lunch with him last year at Hive Life. And so Eric's going to be on with another person or two on September the 14th. And we're hoping to raise through the donations that you make. We want to give those to the Bee Informed Partnership as a donation to help them out. And YouTube always keeps a cut of the donations you make here. But Sherry and I are going to be providing the difference of the donations that YouTube would keep and does keep. And we'll just make that whatever you donate will be what they get. So we'll be saving your pennies and nickels for September the 14th. And let's come out and really support Bee Informed Partnership. If you haven't had a chance to look at their website, do take a look and you'll get more familiar with Bee Informed Partnership. I think you'll like what they're doing with bees over the years. So looking forward to having Eric on. Eric and I are pretty active personalities. The two of us on screen together, it's going to be, I'm going to warn you right now, it's going to be rowdy. We're rowdy when we're together. Thanks for the $10 gift. We appreciate that so much. Hey, David. So I've noticed in Southern Illinois, we're getting swarms popping up. If I were to capture one, what would you recommend to do and to make it through the Illinois winter? The reason why we're having swarms pop up in late summer and fall is because once there's a nectar flow, bees start thinking it's spring and they just start raising, you know, brood and everything, and they start wanting to populate and reproduce. And so that can happen. So be ready to be on the look for swarms in late summer. Can they make it through the winter? It sounds like to me personally, it sounds like a suicide mission. They don't know winter's coming. It does sound bad. Now, let's talk about this. Let's all, Beak Squad, you're known because you follow me on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much. And I've helped you learn a lot. So now you got to think with me and put your education into practice. You take a hive, and let's be very generous. Let's say there are 60,000. It's going to be easier to do the math. 60,000 bees. And almost half of them are swarming. So we've got a swarm that makes up about 20 to 30,000 bees. So can a colony, a swarm that's made up of about 20 to 30,000 bees, which is equal to 3 packages, can they make it through Illinois winter? I'm going to say it's a good chance they can. Here's what's working against them. It's not so much their number, but they may not be able to draw foundation out. So if you have already drawn foundation, that's going to give them a head start, see. Foundation is best drawn out in the spring, not so much later in the year. So that's the kind of the telltale sign right there. If you got some good drawn out foundation and you can feed the heck out of them for the next few months, yeah, I'd say they have as good a chance to make it through. If you're feeding them with drawn comb, I think they can expand and make it through an Illinois winter. Absolutely. If you're going to give them undrawn comb and you're not going to feed them, oh no, it's a crapshoot. I would say not going to happen. So that's a good question. That is happening. What do you do with them? You can also combine them. If you capture them, then you could maybe combine them with a hive that's weak, that's got a good queen, and then let that swarm kind of filter over there in a newspaper combining and strengthen up some of your hives with those swarms. That's what I would prefer to do, actually. Yep. All right. Oh, matching funds. Well, that's good to hear. Checked my hive, no pollen coming in. They have honey, and notice the bees are eating some of the eggs. What do I do? Let them be. Oh my gosh, I know all about bees eating eggs. That was what I ran into. A lot of my presentations that I give, I always tell about how I came up with feeding bees in the fall. And that's because a lot of my colonies, 10 or 15, 20 years ago, I discovered they were eating the eggs in the late summer and fall. Why are they doing that? Because eggs, I like eggs. Eggs are filled with protein, and bees can become very protein deprived this time of the year. And so when they start laying the eggs, rather than raise them to be larvae and have to feed the larva, they just go ahead and eat the eggs. And that's not a good idea, because we need those eggs to become bees of winter physiology. So in order to stop them from eating their own eggs to have protein, I started feeding my bees in the fall, a couple of weeks after the dirt starts. And I put my Honeybee Healthy, Amino Bee Booster, and pollen powder, Ultra Bee pollen protein substitute in 1-to-1 sugar water. I use a teaspoon of each of those 3 ingredients to feed my bees from the top during a dearth. And they seem to start eating those nutrients and leave those eggs alone and let them, and the nurse bees can actually raise those eggs and have bees of winter physiology. That's what's going wrong right there. They just don't have enough onboard food to take care of those eggs, so they're consuming them. So start feeding those bees, that's for sure. Lone Star Pioneering. I have a hive being robbed. I put a wet sheet on the hive. How long do I leave the sheet on the hive? Oh, robbing is so disappointing. So disappointing. It's hard to stop it. Robbing is something that we see a lot in the animal kingdom. Animals getting ready to overwinter kind of go crazy, bulking up for winter. And hives are no exception. A strong colony will go out and find a weaker colony, and they'll rob. They'll just bust their way in, fight at the door, go in there, saw open all the honey, and fly back. Sometimes they convince the whole colony to go back to their colony, and it'd be deserted. But wet blankets seems to be one of the things that we've heard people say they do. Other people say that, they can put a robber screen on. There's a lot of remedies for robbing, but I'm going to tell you this. Once robbing starts, it's a frenzy. If you've never seen it, a lot of you are seeing play flights when bees take a play flight in the front and you panic thinking it's being robbed. A lot of you see bees bearding on the front of the hive and you think, oh no, they're being robbed. A lot of you will see heavy nectar flows and bees flying a lot in and out. And you think they're being robbed. But robbing is when bees are fighting each other at the door. You can see them curling up and just grabbing each other. And they're all around the hive. They're trying to get under the top cover. They're trying to get in the back. They're all around it. It's a horrifying thing to see. I've taken the water hose. I've sprayed them down with water hoses. You just hope that it will get dark soon and the bees will go home. One of the things you can do is take the hive away 2 or 3 miles away and hope that robbers won't find it there until the robbing starts. Or try feeding your bees 100 yards away from where your colonies are. Feed them these good ingredients that I talked about. Amino Bee, Honeybee Healthy, some protein, Ultra Bee protein substitute, pollen substitute powder, 1-to-1 sugar water in a bowl real far away from your hives. The robbers might find that and find it to be a lot easier than trying to beat their way into a hive. Those are some things, but I'm sorry that's happening. That's very frustrating. You see robbing. Put a robber screen on it for sure. Hey, Carol Livingston, good to hear from you again. Recently, in one of your videos, the importance of windbreak in bee yards was rated more important than wrapping a hive for winter. Can you elaborate? Absolutely. One of the studies that I've been doing, a backyard study that I've been doing this week, I've been actually measuring the temperature and trying to cool my hives using different techniques. And one of the things I've discovered, no matter what I do, the bees will keep that temperature around 96, 97 degrees. I can move 90-degree air in there and they will keep it the same temperature. I can throw, I did it, I've got a video coming out, I think Saturday, where I used an ice box. I did a great experiment using ice. I love that experiment. I got the box on top down to, oh, I can't tell you that. You have to watch the video. I'm not going to tell you what the video is, but I'll show you on Saturday. But it was incredible. And they kept it the same temperature. Bees thermoregulate the inside of their colony, especially around the brood nest area. So what little we do on the outside doesn't really change much on the inside. Now, what does happen, we can cause them to work harder or less hard. Does that make sense? Like if they're going to work really hard in the wintertime to keep it 96 degrees, 92 degrees around the brood nest area, and if the wind's hitting it and it's not wrapped, obviously they may have to work harder to generate the heat. Wrapping them could cause them to not have to work so hard. Don't take that to mean exactly what it sounds like, because typically all they're doing is eating food and using their wing and leg muscle, thoracic muscle, to really generate that heat. And so they don't really have to individually go out of their way and just kill themselves to work hard. They know how to make heat. They're good at it. Some bees are just heater bees, but we think it could help them. A wind block is what I think is the best thing. So I look at it this way, Carol. Stay with me, everybody. I live in an old farmhouse built in 1876, and it's not insulated very well. I thought about insulating it, but I'm too old to enjoy the benefits for the cost. I don't know. So when it's a windy, cold day, my furnace works so hard. Think of my furnace as the bees, right? It's working so hard. But if it's not windy, if the wind doesn't hit my house, my furnace rarely comes on, even on colder days. So I feel like the bees are going to benefit more from a wind block than trying to wrap it to keep them warm. They can keep themselves warm, but they don't have to work as hard if the wind's not sucking all the heat away. That's my elaboration, Carol. Hope that made a little sense for you. And if you're in doubt, wrap them up, Yeah, it's not going to hurt a thing. Hey, Ryan, how are you? Could you explain the difference between spring, summer feed compared to winter feed? Is the Ultra Bee pollen substitute, Honeybee Healthy Amino Bee mixture ineffective in the winter? Oh, absolutely not. I use the exact same ingredients plus a few more for our winter bee kinds that we feed bees in the wintertime. The ratio of liquid is different to get the candy to be hard enough where the bees can consume it during the wintertime over maybe a week period. But it's the same type of things that they're eating that I recommend that you mentioned here in your question. It's the same products that we put in there with a few more. But the winter bee kinds are the same. So the same process, the same, I guess, ingredients that bees need to have is protein and carbohydrates. That's really what we're trying to get into bees. That's what bees eat in nature. When they fly out to a flower, they're consuming the nectar, which is carbohydrates. They're getting the pollen grains into their back legs, and some of it's going into the honey crop as well. All honey contains pollen. When you eat honey, there are pollen grains in there. And that's what makes honey so good. That's what makes honey honey. If we stripped all the pollen out of honey, it would not be honey, by the way. So it is the same thing, if that answers your question, Ryan. Yeah, same thing. YouTube user. Girls are bringing in a ton of yellow pollen. Do I still need to feed them? That yellow pollen might be goldenrod, perhaps. I'm not sure where you live, but around much of the U.S., goldenrod is starting to bloom a little bit. It has the weirdest smell. It really smells. You almost think you have American foul brood. A lot of new beekeepers that have learned about American foul brood having a bad odor to it, they smell asters like goldenrod in the fall and they panic. I did when I first smelled it. I thought, oh my gosh, I can smell something weird in my hive from 20 yards out. What's going on? And so that it could be goldenrod to be that yellow pollen you're looking at. Well, what I found was that I watched the pollen coming in the front door in the fall, and then I would inspect my colony to see how much of it's being stored. Zero was being stored. So a lot of you live in different places where obviously the pollen is going to be different. Now, there are some people that they have an abundance of fall pollen where you live. The only way you're going to know, open it up, see what they're doing with it. And if you're getting it stored in the comb, then you probably don't need to give them a lot of food. But if they're not storing it, they're using it as it comes in the front door, you need to help them out. Good question. Very good question. I like it. Hey, Wayne, how are you doing? I see a lot of beekeepers prop the lid up on the hive. My question, would that give easy access to wax moth? Yeah, anytime we have openings around the hive that's not the front door, we do leave the opportunity for wax moth and small hive beetle. And they can slip through the smallest of cracks in your hive. So yeah, it's a trade-off. Now, you could use something if you really wanted to micromanage it and be a little more safer, I guess. You could create some way of making a ventilation box on top that has something smaller than the 1/8 hardware cloth. 1/8 is what we have on the screen bottom board. A small hive beetle can go through that. So you need something almost like window screening that's a lot smaller squares to keep moths and beetles out. Ants could still get in there. But think of it that way. You might just get you some window screening and be able to make a little hole or a little ventilation box on top to help keep out the moths. But don't worry about wax moth. If your colony is extremely crowded, extremely healthy, populated really well, they'll keep that under control. I've got some very populated hives right now that still have a lot of small hive beetle. I thought they would have kept them under control, but they still have a lot of beetles. So, but wax moths are known for going into weak colonies. So just worry about your weak colonies with those wax moths. Hi, Michael. How are you? What's your thought on feeding with pollen patties this time of the year? My dearth may start next week. Used to be a big fan of pollen patties. I know a lot of people are. They are something that I worry about with small hive beetle. Small hive beetles can lay eggs in those pollen patties. I would just rather give bees what they naturally consume. And I know they naturally consume nectar with pollen grains in it from flowers. That's why I feed 1-to-1 sugar water with the pollen substitute mixed in it to kind of simulate what bees get in nature. I don't want them having to chew through wax paper and chew through the pollen patties. Bees aren't really chewers. They can, they will, they do, but they don't have a lot of teeth. They don't have teeth to start chewing things up. So they have to add, most of the things that almost everything bees eat, they eat through a straw, similar to a straw. They're proboscis. So they really need to slurp and suck their meals. And so that's what I try to simulate. So they're actually chewing with their mandibles and mouth parts to kind of chew up those pollen patties. And they have to add a lot of moisture to it to make it what they want it to be. So I'm not really excited about pollen patties anymore, but that's me. You do what you want to. Yeah, that's right. All right. Dearth may start next week. Okay. How is your flow hive? Will you keep it single brood, or do you think you'll add another deep? Thank you. I have thought about that a lot. And what I've decided to do is overwinter it in a single deep. I'm going to feed it my Winter Be Kind, of course. They'll do fine. It's pretty good size. And I think they'll do fine. I don't see why they won't. But I'll be taking off the honey. I'll be extracting and removing the honey supers and letting them overwinter in that single deep. Fingers crossed. The horizontal hive is more what I'm worried about. They're so populated, doing so well, but I need to still figure out a way to feed them during the winter. The flow hive has done really well. I love it. I have some personal opinions about the flow hive community. And I don't know how much details you want me to go into about that, but I do have some personal opinions about the Flow Hive community. The Flow Hive community, Sherry, should I say much about what I want to say about the Flow Hive community? Yeah, she's saying maybe, maybe not. Some of the people that have watched my videos on me with the Flow Hive, let's keep it a secret. They haven't been the nicest people about that. Wow. They've really kind of slammed me a lot. Everything I do on a Flow Hive, I get slammed. You're not doing it right. You should have read the instructions. I mean, I've just gotten beaten up on it. So I've kind of pulled back. In fact, I know some of you left some good comments at Flow Hive people, but I don't know why they're so sensitive about the Flow Hive, but a lot of sensitivity. So anyway, I like the Flow Hive, and I made a comment that it took me a while to put it together, and people didn't like me saying that it took me a while to put it together, even though I said I could only work on it a few minutes a week or something. They still thought whatever, but I would have expected a lot more positive comments. That's why I'm not really talking and taking you through the horizontal hive or the Apiary hive, because what I'm doing, these are new to me. I mean, I know about them, but I've never ran these hives before. So in hindsight, I'd like to spend a year in these hives rather than just dive into them and start making videos. But I made the Flow Hive video because I wanted to go into it like a brand new beekeeper. And I wanted to say, this is what brand new beekeepers go through, people. They buy a Flow Hive, they put it together, not having a lot of tools at home. They have to read the instructions. They kind of not really have any beekeeping experience. And this is what it's like to be a new beekeeper with a Flow Hive. So that was my intention. People weren't too bad. But anyway, I like the Flow Hive a lot. I really do like the way it's easy to harvest. Yeah. Love the Flow Hive. Love it. Hey, Frank, how are you? Will bees move honey up into a super? Will they move capped honey up into a super? The opposite is true, Frank. The opposite is going to happen. This time of the year, I found that bees will move honey out of supers. They'll open it up, take it downstairs to the brood nest area. Be expecting that. That's what happens to me. It seems like when I was trying to make my living off honey, I would just find a whole, 2 or 3 supers full of honey ready to be capped. I mean, it's capped over, ready to be harvested. You go back in a week and it's gone. The bees pulled it down into more of the brood nest area. So if they need the space, yes, they can move it up there, give the queen more room to lay down there. But I've seen it pulled down more often than pulled up. Good question. I like that. Yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it? Hi, Andy. How are you? Thoughts on single deep versus double deep for overwintering? That all depends on where you live, how cold it is, how populated your bees are going into winter. And of course, it depends on your mite loads. And it depends heavily on the queen, the population. There's so many variables there. A lot of people do overwinter in the north in single deeps, and they are very good at it. It happens. So a lot of times the reason bees perish is not so much they're in a single deep or a double deep, it's because of virus loads or they don't have enough food on board. So I believe you could go through the winter in a single deep, really in the north where it's really cold, if you fed them and if your mite levels were low all year, they didn't have a lot of viruses. Yeah, there's no reason why they couldn't do just as good in 2 deeps as well. I get that. So that's a personal preference. It's a personal skill. I think that beekeepers have to know how to do both. It's a little bit different. Obviously, if you have 2 deeps, there's a lot more bees in there to feed, take care of, but they can make a lot more heat than a single deep usually, if they're well populated. Good question, Andy. Very good question. Vlad, how are you? Hi, David. I plan to merge 2 hives, one with old queen, one with young queen. I have trouble finding queens. Which one is most likely to survive? Easy question for me, the young queen, right? Younger queens are going to survive much better, have a chance of better survival than the older queen is. Yep. So always go with the young queen. In fact, if you can requeen your hive every year, that has a lot of benefit to it. Now, you need to be raising your own queens to do that. but if you can, it's going to help so much. You bet. Good thought on that. David Cross. I was in my 3 colonies today and saw a bee with what I assume was pollen, but it was really ruby red and looked wet. Was it really pollen? Yes, absolutely. A lot of people think bees are bleeding. Like my bees are injured, they're bleeding. Bees don't really have red blood that oozes out of a wound like we do. And so that wasn't blood if you were worried about that. I've seen that too. People have sent me pictures of red pollen on the backs of bees, on their hairs, behind their head, and on their legs and all, and they worry about red pollen. But there is a lot of plants that give off red pollen. And so that's what you're seeing for sure. Sherry Studley, I believe, Sherry, you're new to B Team 6. I think I answered a couple of your questions earlier on email. Welcome to B Team 6, Sherry. And you almost spelled your name like my wife, a little bit different, but thank you for your donation. I appreciate that so much. And good to have you as part of B Team 6 as well. Nice to see you. Hey, Tracy, how are you? Tracy Blevins, North Georgia. Can the syrup go bad in the heat if bees do not eat it fast enough using a top feeder? I'm going to say yes. Anything can go bad, especially if you have a mixture of sugar, water, protein together. The heat, it can actually cause it to, if it has yeast in it, it can ferment and all that stuff. The best thing to do is just mix enough up to last you a day or two. And by that time, it's going to be fine. But if bees aren't consuming it really quickly and it sits on there for a week in extreme heat, the best thing I like to do if I'm worried about it is I just open it up, I smell it, and might even taste it, make sure it is the same that I want it to be. So you just kind of take a look and see, but keep it cool until you want to use it in your hive is going to be the best thing to do. But that's a good reason to be concerned as well. Avon Wood. Yeah, hey, first year beekeeper here. Well, congratulations. So glad that you're a new beekeeper. Will my hive stop making queen cells? Your hive's making queen cells? Oh, wow. Either they're trying to replace your queen or they're wanting to swarm. I'm constantly worried they're going to swarm and die because it's too late in the season. I check once a week. They have space. I see. Well, are the queen cells down on the lower part of the frames, like halfway or down? That's usually a swarm cell indication. And if there are a lot of them, that usually is that your bees want to swarm. Supersedure cells is when they're wanting to replace the queen. Those are on the top half usually, and there's not that many. It can be 1 or 3, not a whole lot. So I don't know which one you're experiencing, but it could be what we talked about earlier. There's summer swarms, there's fall swarms, and they instinctively want to reproduce. All animals instinctively want to reproduce. You might be having a good nectar flow, and they might want to swarm, even though they have plenty of space. Bees don't have to be crowded to swarm. An instinctive reproductive swarm can happen even though they have plenty of room. Could be what you're doing. You're doing the right things by watching their activity. If you don't want them to swarm, you can keep cutting out the swarm cells. If their queen is there, the brood pattern looks good, maybe you could throw a queen excluder on the bottom, between the bottom board and the deep, so the queen can't leave. That might be a good idea. Good idea. Teddy's Outdoors. Good evening. How many 5-frame nukes can I make out of 14 by 8 plywood? Thank you. Oh, one sheet of 4 by 8 plywood. I don't recall now. I know I can make 2 for sure, but maybe 3 or more. I'm sorry, I don't have the math in front of me right now, but I definitely was able to make a couple of them. But then I used some of those other pieces for other projects recently, so I didn't really remember. But yeah, I don't know. But a couple, 3 or 4, maybe somebody else can leave a comment. And of course, it depends on what you're using for a top. I use a metal top, so that saves a sheet there. Depends on how big you're making it. Most people make them 9 inches wide on the outside edge. And then, of course, they're about 20 inches front to back. So Tracy says 4 or 5 nukes out of a sheet. So, yeah, that's probably what I would guess. That'd be pretty good. Plywood isn't cheap either, is it? That's what's great about comments. Dave Cross says you can make 4. I believe 4. Let's go with 4. Oh, Chris, sorry. Chris, yeah. I keep saying Cross because I'm old and blind. Lori, how are you? Are you supposed to feed sugar water when the supers are on? That's debatable. If those supers are what you want to have honey in it that comes from flowers, then I would not feed them. My opinion is anytime you have honey supers on that you're trying to get filled because you want to sell the honey or use it for yourself, don't feed them. But anytime your honey supers aren't on, you should be feeding your bees. So that's a pretty good answer right there, I think. Just makes sense, doesn't it? Now, this is going to sound kind of weird, but it's not the end of the world if you do a little bit of both. If they get a little bit of your sugar water in there, they're still inverting it. They're still adding their enzymes to it. It still is sucrose, but it's just not the same thing that came from an apple tree or a clover or something like that. So you be the judge of that. I really prefer that they go to flowers. Yep. Linda, hi, David. I watched your video on fall feeding and I'm using gallon bucket feeders. They finish a gallon in less than 2 days. How often should I fill the buckets? That's a good question, Linda. Here's what I want you to do. Number one, I assume you're putting that on top of the hive, but number one, I want you to make sure that's not leaking. Let's make sure, put something under the hive, something dry, piece of cardboard. Let's make sure nothing's dripping out. That's a really important thing to do. And if they're eating that much, I kind of think you ought to keep feeding them. If they need it, they're eating it because they need it. If you can afford, it's in your budget to give them the food, yeah, keep feeding them. Hey, Stacy, thank you for the donation. I appreciate that. Stacy R. Means a lot to get your donations to help us with our live streaming. It really does. Appreciate that, guys. Yeah, keep feeding them as long as they'll take it. Good question. Love it. Bees do eat a lot in the fall. You might think that they don't, but they do consume a lot of the foods that we can give them. And I don't really think you can overfeed them. We're trying to get them to raise bees of winter physiology, so they're turning a lot of that food, they're consuming it so that they can feed the bees of winter physiology. So keep that in mind. They really do need a lot of food to raise these bees that will live 4 to 8 months in the wintertime. Right now, bees are dying about every 36 days in the summer. So we need those bees that can live a long time. Good point. Hey, Jeff Perry, do bees fly at night? I will sometimes see a couple of bees buzzing around my porch light. I turn the light off to not draw them. That's funny because we have the same problem at our house too. We like outdoor security lights. I've moved most of my hives, up to the filming studio down our lane, but I've still got a couple of hives back near the building, the training center and all. And same thing there. Leave the porch lights on and you can hear those bees buzzing inside those porch lights. Bees are attracted to light. That's what they use. They're attracted. They navigate. They go to light. They go to the light. You leave it on, they're going to go to the light. You turn it off, they're going to try to find their way back home. Yep, that's a no-brainer. They do fly at night. I've read that in some places there's certain flowers that only bloom at night. And I don't know if it's by moonlight or what, but the bees will go and gather that nectar at night. That's amazing, isn't it? I don't think they're flying that far, but they can do it. But my bees don't fly at night. They need the light of the day to navigate. But I guess it can be done. Not going to say never. Navy Phil, 1 of 10 hives in Georgia, has weak laying young queen. Should I requeen, combine, or help them with resources to make it through the winter? Yeah, is that one queen laying weak? Is she a weak layer because of the hive? Because the hive is weak, or is it a queen issue? So maybe when in doubt, requeen it if you can. I think that'd be the first thing I would do. It sounds like we already know that it's a young queen. Maybe she wasn't mated well. Maybe she's not laying 1,000 eggs a day. Maybe she's laying 400 eggs a day. The brood's not building up. So the best way to tell, Navy Phil, is to just examine your comb, see if your foundation or your brood nest frames have a lot of capped over pupae, smooth capped over brood pattern that looks good. That tells you whether or not your queen's doing good. But it could be if they're not being fed well. They don't have a lot of resources, that the bees are eating the eggs behind her, making her look bad, making it look like it's her fault. They're the ones that are chewing up her eggs. So it's kind of you almost have to be an investigator to find out what's wrong. Is the hive weak, not supporting their queen, or is the queen weak, not supporting the hive? It's hard to know sometimes. Good question, though. Yeah, good question. Oh, Jessica, thanks for hosting today. I appreciate that. David, what causes larvae to melt? Ooh, that's kind of tough. It could be diseased that it could melt. That could be a pathogen causing that. You know, you can sometimes see it in different kind of brood diseases. Sometimes you it could be overheating and just dying in the hive like that. There's a lot of things that could cause it. That's sad. You're going to have to get to the bottom of that, I think, and do a little more research on what are the conditions of the colony. Is it extremely hot? Is it happening in just a few cells? Is it happening across a lot of the larvae? Just kind of maybe take some pictures and see what those pictures look like if you do a comparison of different pathogens that you might do research on online and find out. That might help a lot. Yeah. You could be confusing larvae melting and being just in a huge pool of royal jelly. Is that not the case? Probably not, but sometimes it's hard to distinguish between a real soupy mix of royal jelly and the actual pearly white larvae. They look almost the same. So maybe you need to make sure that's not the case. Can I give bees leftover fruit? Thank you. Oh, well, where would you give it to them at? I mean, if you put it out in the yard or something, it's possible you could attract small hive beetle. That's the first thing I think of. Rotting fruit will bring all of my small hive beetles to your house, no matter where you live. It's terrible to have fruit like that. Beetles do love rotting fruit. So that's an issue. If you put kind of leftover fruit around or in your hive, small hive beetle issue. So I wouldn't really go there at all. I'm going to say I don't like that idea just because of beetles. Okay, I have beetle issues that I always try to keep reduced down, and that's something that I wouldn't do. Just personally, they would eat it though. The bees will go to cut open grapes, cut open apples. You know, they won't cut them open usually, but if birds peck them open, the bees will be there to get that sugar out of them. That's for sure. That's a good question. Beetles, watch out for the beetles. Hey, Junebug, do you have a mite count from a green drone comb? No, that's a bad thing about a green drone comb. It's not a test device. There's difference between testing and treating. Thanks, David Galloway, for your donation. Appreciate that so much. I do. So what I'm saying is we test for mites and we treat for mites. A green drone comb is a mechanical control for mites. It's not known as a way of testing for mites. So we really don't know a number that we can look at and decide what our count is by a green drone comb. EL, thank you for your super sticker. Good job for the super sticker. Look at those donations lining up at the top. Yeah, we might get enough to pay for the bill today. The internet bill. We're getting close to the 8 o'clock hour, and Sherry and I are going to enjoy supper here in just a few minutes. So we'll take one more question. One more question for Beak Squad. You guys are so kind tonight. Stacy, do you like the traps for beetles in the hives with the oil? Yes, I do. That's my go-to method. It really is. The more beetles I have, the more traps I use. I use a little throwaway, the plastic ones. I keep using them over and over again. Be careful with the oil when you put it in there. You don't want to spill it. Let it be on top of the trap. Bees will track it and it will kill the bees. But put about a 1/4 inch of oil down in the bottom of that trap. And you might have to put 3 or 4 of those traps between the frames in one deep or both deeps or even in your honey supers. It's like fishing. You're going to have to move them around to where the fish are. You're going to have to move the beetle traps around to where the beetles are so that you can trap more beetles. Don't be afraid to put a lot of beetle traps in there if you've got a lot of beetle problems. Oil traps, I love it so much. All right. Well, that's a good question time, everybody. Hey, don't forget, if you want a Beak Squad t-shirt, coffee mug, they're available. Here's the website. Write that down. Make your way over there and join Beak Squad apparel. We appreciate it so much, guys. And keep in the back of your mind that on September the 14th, we are going to have a special live stream, and we'll be featuring the Be Informed Partnership. They'll be on here talking with us about all the stuff they do. We'll be taking up donations for them, and we're going to be matching the donations as well. So it's a good time to contribute to research and data gathering that they do. It's going to help them out a lot. So we like to be a part of helping all of us pool together to use the donations here for a good cause. And that's important. We did a food drive a few months ago to gather food for people that were needing food. So, we like to contribute that way. I know all of us as beekeepers really do like to give back. We're giving people, aren't we? We want to give our bees the best. We want people to really enjoy the honey. We want people to enjoy life. I enjoy life more because of you guys. You guys are so great. I enjoy making videos. I enjoy sharing my life with you guys. A few of you seem to enjoy what I have to say, and I appreciate that. I think I'm up to 6 people now that like to hear me talk. So I appreciate that. There's always fun in helping people navigate life, navigate their beehives, but also navigate life. And I found that the more I learn about bees, it parallels with life experience. So we can make that parallel sometime and endure. Learning about bees helps us endure life better as well. So I love you guys. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, Jessica, for joining us as our hostess with the mostest tonight. Thank you, Sherry, for behind the scenes, all that Sherry does to keep the comments going, flashing stuff on screen, keeping us on track. And it's been fun. We're going to be back next Thursday as well. So mark your calendars. It's always Central Time. We're always here. We're putting a lot of effort into the live stream, and I know you enjoy it, and I appreciate it so much. So we'll say good night for now, everybody. See you next time.